grandma that lived in Arizona, and her grandchildren had disappeared. She was very, very worried about them for a couple of months. And it is a long story, but just to give you the clip notes, she was really worried about these grandkids, and she went to the Arizona courts, but again, she didn't know where these grandchildren were, so they couldn't do much to help, but they did give her temporary guardianship of kids that she didn't know and she did everything she could figure out. Well, a couple months later, the kids turned up and they were in state custody in Texas. And miracles of miracles, the judge in Texas, the judge in Arizona, they worked together. This seldom happens, but it all worked out in this case where they said grandma could go to Texas and probably pick up the kids and bring them home. She'd have guardianship, and then they'd settle things later. And the daughter who was in jail had agreed that that's what she'd want her kids to go to grandma until, things were figured out. So, you can imagine how stressed she was. Relieved that her grandchildren were okay and safe and that she could go pick them up, excited that she was going to see them again. Kind of stressed over the whole situation with her daughter being in jail, but kind of relieved that her daughter was okay too, and that her daughter was alive. So she flies to Texas. Now, she reports that her older grandson, who was only about 7 years old at the time, was green. No, I'm sorry, I take that back. He was blue. He was very empathetic, kind. And the younger child, who was about 5, was green and logical. So she gets to Texas, expecting to see this blue and green grandchild. And she goes to court, and the judge does pretty much what, her daughter stands up and says, yeah, I want him to go with mom. Judge says, that's going to be okay. You'll take care of things here in Texas, then you'll have to go back to Arizona and you'll figure out the kids there. Okay, so it all goes as planned. And now she finishes court and she goes to I don't know if it's CPS or DCS, whatever the state, child welfare program is in Texas. She goes there and they bring in these 2 little grandchildren. And the grandchildren are active. They're like climbing the walls, active, jumping on furniture. It had only been 2 months that they've been gone. And they bring these 2 children in. She hardly even recognized. Their behavior was different, like very different. And she said to the case manager, what's going on? Like, they almost act like they have ADHD or they're hyperactive, but they weren't like that. Last time I saw them, which was only a couple months ago, is this a reaction of trauma? I mean, what is this? And also grandma was thinking, and I don't know if I can do this. I love my grandkids, but what's going on? And the case manager said, we tested their hair, a hair follicle test, and they both tested positive for meth. You know what? This too shall pass, and once things get out of their system, you'll probably have your grandchildren closer to what you remember. She said, meth? Like, did some adult give these grandchildren meth? And she said, honey, just by cuddling with somebody that does meth, even skin-to-skin contact, they could be exposed. It was enough to test positive in the hair, and I can give you that information. And probably what you're going to see is this. You're going to see some of this. And it could be, that they haven't had rules and other stuff too. But you're probably going to see this. This is in their system. And then maybe you'll see like a kind of a flu, like they're coming off of it. And then you'll have your grandchildren pretty much back to what you had before. Sorry. I feel so sorry for her. And that's exactly what happened. They came to Arizona. It didn't only took a few days, and the kids did act like they got the flu or something, and then they got sick. And then they got better, and then they were her little grandchildren. The relationship was there. So the point of this lesson is we want to see their personalities, but just because they're really acting up, or even us, it could be other things. It could be allergies, right? Or a headache, or hunger, or thirst. It could be a diagnosis that they need to go to a doctor and get some kind of treatment. Again, that would just be a snapshot in time. something that you want to deal with. So when we talk about colors and personalities, if you can't see the colors, it could be something else going on. I know myself, when I have a headache, I might not be like my cheery, happy, normal self. I can be kind of grumpy, or if I'm hungry or thirsty. So when a child's acting out of sorts, sometimes it's water, sometimes it's a cookie or a snack will do the trick. Maybe it's a nap, maybe it's a blanket, but you want to start see. It's not that you're failing, it's just that you're noticing what's going on. And I've discovered this. What's going on? Is there more to the story, to this kiddo that you're in charge of? You hear my dog? More to the story that's going on, and try to figure that out. You're like a detective, right? And most of the time, this fog or mud that we pretend that we see on the backpack can clear up with time once we realize what's going on. You know, give them a nap, give them a cookie, give them a cracker. If it's more than that, more than dehydration or something like that, more than time, because maybe they're just sick. Maybe they've been exposed to something like my son and the red food coloring, or these grandchildren and the more serious drugs. Maybe it's a diagnosis, and you've got to take the next step and get some professional help and get that going. So that's our lesson today, is the liner. So remember, we have the backpack, and in the backpack, we have trauma. The little pebbles, the big boulders, they're what goes in the backpack. And then outside is the personalities, and that's how it's going to deal with this trauma. And now we know that there's a liner on top of that can obscure the color. It can be muddy or cloudy, foggy. And we're going to have to deal with that if that's the issue, so that we can see the colors. Next episode, we're going to get to better, less sad things on how do we deal with the trauma that's in the backpack. How do we build the connections and help these children develop resilience based on your color, your boulders, your pebbles, their boulder. I'm sorry, their pebbles, their boulders, your colors, their colors, you being extroverted or introverted, them being extroverted or introverted. Haven't you learned a lot? And if this is your first episode and you don't know what the heck Pam's talking about, you can go back to the past episodes. I explain it all. Or maybe you're a fast learner and you've got this. Anyways, I want to tell you that you're doing it. You're okay. Just like that grandma in Texas that, oh my goodness, I can't do this. She did it. She did it. Those children are thriving. You can do this. I hope you seek the joy, find the good, and most of all, know that you're loved, that you're appreciated, that you're needed, and that you're a superhero. Okay, till next time. Bye-bye.